Welcome to Western Perspective, I'm Steve Anderson. This week we continue with the Men's Mental Health Interview Series, where grassroots organisation Men's Talk kickstarts important discussions of healthy masculinity, mental well-being and new ways to reduce domestic violence. This week we spoke with Joseph Forkan, an Irish barber whose group Chops and Chats, who not only helped men in WA to get a good haircut, but also created a listening post to encourage people to come forward and speak about their difficulties.
Chop and Chats is it's a service that I came up with recently because I've been barbering for the last few years, and I've obviously built a relationship with clients, and I wanted to kind of get rid of that stigma where a lot of men, especially in my home country, there's a stigma where men can't talk and whatnot, and they can't come forward and speak what's on their mind or if they're going through something. And I wanted to kind of open up a door for men where they can come sit down, let's say have a beer, or even just to enjoy the experience of getting a haircut, but also having an option to open up to a barber and literally just talk whatever's on their mind. It doesn't have to be anything crazy that might be going on in their life, but just for them to know that that I'm here to listen to them and whatnot, that they're comfortable, that they can come to me and more or less just speak about whatever, and that I'm there for them, and that men can come to someone like me or other barbers and just speak whatever's on their mind, knowing that we're there to listen, Yeah. So that's the purpose behind Chop and Chats.
Beautiful. So I've seen this kind of conversation stigmatised around women and hairdressers.
Yeah.
Why is it so important for men to have this conversation?
I think it's important for men because a lot of men, especially from where I'm from, they don't speak how they feel. They hold back and they'll just work through it, and then it'll come to a point where they're not dealing with what may be going on in their life, and then it all just comes down at one time, and then they might do something stupid, or and I think it's because it's the stigma, really. Do you know what I mean? It's like they don't know how to go to someone and talk to someone. They think it might be weird to go and talk to someone, and just for them to understand that we're in a different generation now, and that it's okay to talk, because men don't really talk to other guys or other men about what might be going on in their life, and that's why Chop and Chats is there for people. And especially in the last few years, I have guys coming into me that are from all ages, from young to older, in their 60s, and they come talk. They'll talk to me about what might be going on in their life, whether they're going through a divorce, where they might have been able to say that to some of their friends. Do you get me? So that's the purpose behind it all, and it's working. And it's working, especially out in Australia. And especially in my home country as well, I've seen a lot of older men being able to come forward and talk to me, and it's helping.
It's a very non-confrontational way of being able to speak to someone.
Exactly. It's not like, let's say you sit down and then you're talking to another person across the table and be like, what's wrong with you? Or what's the problem? Where when you're getting a haircut, you're building a relationship over time, and I'm listening to what they have to say, and I think it's more valuable. You're getting more out of it, especially for men, and you're building an experience for them, and you're giving them the best possible experience. And even if they don't get something out of it at that, when they came to get a haircut, they're still getting a good haircut. Again, that haircut's giving them confidence. They're going to leave feeling good no matter what, And if you can get a good conversation in, or even just listening to what they're saying, they're going to gain something from that over time.
Have you had any conversations that you're willing to share with clients that you've had that have really sort of changed their perspective on things that they've talked to you about?
Yeah, so back in Ireland, before I came out to Australia, I had this one guy that came to me, and this is where the whole idea actually started of Chops and Chats. There was a guy, because I used to do bookings back in Ireland where they'd have to book through an app or whatnot, and there was a guy that came at the end of the day. I was packing up my stuff, and this guy, I seen in his eyes, that he wanted to come in and get a haircut and whatnot, but I seen that there was something going on. Do you know what I mean? There was something bothering him, And I told him, I was like, all the other guys that I worked with left, and I said, no, I'll stay back. I'll cut his hair. And I just straight away, we both were talking, everything was good. and then it just started getting like, we started relating to things, you know. So we had that relationship formed straight away, and he was gave him a great service, and we ended up just sitting down on the couch after the haircut because we were just talking for like an hour and a bit, and it was so effortless. It was just happening, you know. It wasn't forced or anything. And he went on his day, and then about a year later, I thought, you know, it just helped a guy out and whatnot. A year later, he came down to Galway, where I'm from, in Ireland, because he lived in Dublin. He travelled all the way to the other side of Ireland to come down and try and find me again. And I wasn't working in that same shop. I was working down the street, and he came to me and he was saying, he went to the shop that I used to work at, and he was trying to find my number and whatnot. And they didn't have my number at the time. I had a new number and stuff, so he couldn't find me. So he went back home. He came down the following weekend and to try and find me again. And it was so weird because when I was walking up the street, he was walking down the street, and we just seen each other, you know. And he came, and I was happy to see him. He was happy to see me, and he asked me to go for coffee with him. And at the time, I was free, so I was able to go. And he just pretty much wanted to thank me for that conversation that I had with him, you know, because at that time he was going through a divorce. His business was going through bankruptcy. The business was failing, and his life was kind of all upside down, you know. And I just listened to what he had to say, and I was just reassuring him that it'll all be okay, and that he needed to focus on himself and whatnot. And he came down a year later to try and find me, and he ended up finding me on the street, and went for that coffee. And he more or less wanted to thank me for that conversation, because that conversation that I had with him was his turning point in his life. You know, even though he was going through a lot of things, that just a conversation like that completely turned the tables. It changed everything for him, and he wanted to say that his life is great now. Everything turned around. Like, the business is doing great now. He met a new woman, and life couldn't be better. But he said it was that conversation that I had with him that changed everything for him. You know, and he was going into that. He was going in for that haircut, thinking it was his last. That's the way he was explaining it to me. And he's like, he said, if I didn't have that conversation with you, I don't know where I'd be now. You know, and that was kind of what made me want to show awareness and tell men that, you know, don't hide away from what you might be going through, but just, you know, show it. Go to someone and talk about it, rather than holding it and then, you know, not doing anything about it. You know, so that's what kind of motivated me to kind of move forward and wanted to do something with Chop and Chats, you know, because there's always a story. Everyone's kind of going through something, and I think it's important for people to talk, you know, express their emotions. Yeah.
It's an amazing story, but that's where it kind of started and originated, and now bringing it to Perth here in Australia is an amazing initiative to bring on board at Stanford Barbers. So I wish you all the best with it, and
thank you so much.
Commend you for your work in
thank
the
you.
health sector and bringing Chops and Chats to the table. So
it's
very much.
It's just the start, but I'm looking forward to it, you know. Yeah, thanks anyway.
That was Joseph Forkan from Chops and Chats. And now here is AMA WA spokesman Dr. Andrew Miller with his weekly medical and news commentary.
Hi, thanks for your time. Just wanted to make a few reflections this week as we close in on the 1,000 deaths from COVID in Western Australia since the start of the pandemic. And firstly, how lucky we are compared to many places around the world where they had a much worse death toll than we have over the last few years. And that's because primarily we kept the borders closed up until that point when we had a very high vaccination penetration rate into our population. Anti-vaxxers not really a thing. We had well over 99% of people turn out for their first couple of shots, and over time we will see the value of continuing to get the boosters as they become available. The other thing I'd reflect on is that is 1,000 families and communities affected, and that these are real people with real faces and names, and who yet had, in most cases, more time to live. And even if they were people who were quite sick, those people, in my experience as a doctor, value every day that they get to spend with family, and these people didn't get that extra time. So even if they were very sick or they were very elderly, which wasn't always the case, it's still a loss for somebody, and I think we can pay our respects and think about those families who've been through a lot. I think also we have to look at where the pendulum is going in terms of protection from an ongoing pandemic, and realise that we've now dropped even mask wearing in hospitals, and I would say that that's swinging too far in the direction of overconfidence at this stage, and we all know where overconfidence and hubris leads to. Unfortunately, transmission of COVID within hospitals to very unwell people has bad outcomes, and we know that it travels in the air. So I think we will come to regret dropping that protection at this stage and getting a bit overconfident. The other thing we have to reflect on is the fact that it's not without its consequence, this disease, apart from death. So there are people who are now still suffering as a result of infection, and up to 5 to 10% of people who have had an infection will have symptoms lasting for months, and some people have not been able to return to normal function for a long time, and COVID is contributing to the severity of other diseases such as dementia and diabetes and cardiovascular disease. So we still have a lot of work to do. It's just as big as smoking in terms of the controls we need to think of for the future, and that doesn't mean that we will go back to lockdowns or to marked restrictions on moving around and that sort of thing. But what it does primarily mean is we need to think about vaccine plus breathing clean air plus antivirals being available to everybody, which they're not yet. And of course, we've got to think about those people who are not yet eligible for vaccination in this country, becoming increasingly isolated in subjecting all babies right through to 5-year-olds to COVID infection without the protection of vaccination that would be available in United States, Singapore, Canada, Israel, and many other countries around the world, even Cuba. So we're getting increasingly out of step in that regard, and I hope that we'll move to protect our little kids soon, so that they can enjoy the same protection that the adults in the population have. The vaccine, of course, is not a guarantee, but it is very, very good at reducing hospitalisations and severe outcome from the disease. So finally, I would say my thoughts are with those people who've lost someone to this disease, or those people who've lost some part of their life to this disease, and an optimistic look towards the future, because we do understand the tools that we need to minimise its impact. Thanks for your time.
That was Dr. Andrew Miller, and that's Western Perspective for this week. We'll be back next Sunday. Until then, Ivan and Melly, back to you.
Thanks, Steve. And now here's Leo with what's coming up on 6 News tonight.
Thanks, guys. On 6 News, condemnation grows over Nazi salutes being performed on the steps of Victoria's State Parliament. Former US President Donald Trump says he expects to be arrested on Tuesday. New South Wales Labor says they're not going to be changing their gambling reform package, as the Greens speak to 6 News, effectively ruling out a deal with the Liberals in the event of a minority government. Watch live right now on our YouTube channel and our website, 6newsau.com. For now, though, it is back to you.
Thanks, Leo. And that's our weekly news and current affairs. We have the latest news on our website, wamnnews.com.au.
Don't forget to subscribe to the WAMN Extra News Club so we can continue our work in the community. Full details on wamnnews.com.au/news/extra. From Melly and myself, wish you good health, good night. See you next Sunday.
Thanks for watching.